Welcome to the biggest house build yet for my MORDHEIM boards. This is the merchant's house. Hi guys, welcome to this week's video. Thanks for joining us. This week, or in this video, I'm going to be building a big merchant's house. It's the biggest build that I've done so far, buildings wise. It's not playable inside. I wanted to build a building that was just a solid building. I got a little bit kind of bored, I guess, of building broken down buildings. So I wanted to just build something that was solid, that I could put on the board. But because of that, I needed it to have playable areas on top. The roof is a little bit architecturally strange. It probably wouldn't exist in the real world because at the very least it would need safety barriers around the edge. But for playability, certainly playing with kids in schools, if I put barriers around the edge, they would get knocked off, they would break, they just wouldn't work. So this was kind of the happy medium between. You'll see what I mean when you watch the video. I hope you enjoy. Here we go. I did some work off camera building this board because a lot of the techniques are the same as before. So there's a lot of the same XPS tiles gone down. I started to build the base of the house so that I could know it could fit. So this is just a piece of white expanded polystyrene that I've then stuck bricks around the outside. There's no new techniques here. There's nothing that I haven't covered in any other videos. I did this off camera because I was just kind of playing with the board and wanted to see how it would work. But that whole building then detaches away from the base. On top of that, I wanted to build a second floor, which is using the grey XPS foam. I think it's 6mm XPS foam cut to size. This textures nicely, although I do end up covering it up again, like I did in one of the older buildings. For these first few bits, there's not any hugely new techniques that I haven't covered before, but I'll go through them again just in case you've missed any of the other videos. It's just a case of checking that the walls fit. These are 8 centimeters high, I think, maybe 75mm, maybe 7.5 centimeters, just to give them a little bit of height. The floor that's there with the white polystyrene is kind of the ground floor, I guess. I'm going to call this one the first floor. Just use a rock to texturize the XPS. In the end, I ended up coating it, and I don't love the way the coating is by the end of it. I'll talk a bit about that a bit more later on, but I should have just left the stone texture, I think, and I probably would next time. Then I wanted to build a bay window. So for this kind of bay window, I used foam card. So foam card, for those who haven't used it before, is 2 sheets of card wrapped around XPS foam. And if you cut it out and then score through the cardboard on one of them, again, I used this technique in the very first house that I built. You can then snap it at those points, and it keeps it as a solid piece, but you get a little bit of joint gap where you can put in some of the square dowel. I lost a lot of video footage here, I'm not sure why, but I cut out some windows for these 3D printed windows, which I will put the link below. Found those for free on Thingiverse and then printed them off. I printed some in resin like those ones and some with my FDM printer. The FDM was a lot quicker, so I've got a lot of the FDM ones which I'll use later. And glued the window down. At this point, the windows were still loose. I hadn't glued them in yet. I just wanted to check that they fit. So I glued that down using a hot glue gun onto the XPS, onto the wall. There's a lot of hot glue gun going on here. I then painted the inside foam of the windows with black Mod Podge because I wanted to seal it, but also I wanted it to be as black as possible so that when you look at the windows, it doesn't look like you can't just see foam on the other side. You know, I wanted it to just look like it was dark. You couldn't really see through. Just sell that impression, really. And also so that when I spray paint it later, if any does go through the window gaps, it's not going to melt the foam on the inside. And just kind of did the inside of the things as well. Then on top of the window, I had a lot of coffee stirrer sticks. I glued these down with hot glue gun. And I stuck them down long and then snipped them off at the end. Rather than trying to measure the specific angles that the window was at, I just kind of glued them down and then snipped them off once they were done, because it was a lot easier. Give it that kind of rough and ready look that I wanted as well. Probably used more coffee stirrer stick than I needed to. I probably could have cut it and placed it, but at this point it was just a top, and I wasn't sure if I was going to put tiles on it at this point. I didn't end up. I quite like the way the wood looked when it was all painted. But it was just a nice, easy way to give it a little bit of a different silhouette to the building, really. With the bay window, it gives you somewhere to hide underneath. Just kind of makes it more interesting. This was a door I wanted to build to get into this floor. Now, I didn't show how I built the door on the first floor, so this was kind of how I built the same for both, really. Cut a strip of XPS out, or a rectangle of XPS, and then just drew in wooden beams and wood grain using a sharp pencil to roughly the right size and dimensions for it. I kind of measured it as in, this looks tall enough for my figure to get through. Cut out some thin strips, and then I think it's about 1 millimetre thick just to go across it as wooden planks to hold it together. Did the same texturing thing with those with the pencil. Punched a few kind of dents into it for not rivets, but nails. And that just sells the idea of a door, really. It doesn't have to be anything hugely complicated. I ended up then putting a bit of wooden kebab skewer through the door and the back wall as well to use as a door handle, which worked really well as well. Then use some of this square doweling just to make a door frame. Again, nothing majorly revolutionary here. It was quite nice to work on something with complete walls. I wasn't having to think about, where could I break it? Where are people going to clamber in and out of the building? What's it going to look like on the inside? I just didn't want to do any more wooden floorings inside a building. Ironically, when we get to the roof, you'll see why that didn't really work out. I then cut thin triangles of coffee stirrer stick, which I used as hinges for the door. Not working hinges, obviously. I could have used cardboard for this or plastic card, but I'd got the wooden stirrers to hand, and I just thought I'd give them a go. And glued those down as well using a hot glue gun. They work once they're painted up with a metallic paint and a bit of rust. They sell really well. They look really nice as hinges. And they, the doors, like I say, not operational. People aren't going in and out of this building, but I tried to think a little bit more about, how would it work as a building? If it was a real building, how would it work? How would the characters use it? So I tried to put the doors in places that I thought would be useful were it a playable building. Same with the roof. I ended up building an extra bit onto the roof to kind of give that usable idea if it was a real thing. Cut a hole for a window there. Started to stick on some more coffee stirrer sticks for the wooden beams to give it that kind of medieval Tudory house feel. Check that all the walls still fit, and I wanted some more windows, so I stuck some more windows in. These are still the resin printed ones. The FDM printed ones are exactly the same, they're just grey when I get to those, but they kind of printed really nicely, and like I say, they were free from Thingiverse, which I'll put the link in the description below. But what I was trying to do is just give, again, like I say, where would the rooms be? Trying to think where would rooms be in this house? So where would the windows be? How would it work if people had lived there at some point, or if it was a merchant's house? And again, it's the same with the beams. Really, there's no kind of. I'm sure there is probably an archaeological formula for where beams should go, but I didn't really research or follow. And I just went with where they look cool. I didn't want you to look through the windows and just see polystyrene, so I stuck some XPS foam just onto the back of the windows. I later realised that this would have been much better using cardboard for the reasons of sealing and spray painting and not having to worry about it melting. So for the upper floor, when I get to that, I did use cardboard. Now here, I wanted to build just a kind of support truss, really. I don't really know what the architectural word is for it, but I just cut a triangle of XPS, blue XPS, dented it all up with a stone, drew in some bricks, and then stuck it back onto the wall. And as you can see on the corners of the wall as well, I've used very thin cereal package cardboard, you'll see that in a minute, to create brickwork on the corner of the otherwise plastered wall. So you can see there it's pink kind of cardboard. I think that was from a leftover Cadbury's Easter egg that we had, so I just cut the cardboard box up into rectangles and stuck those on to give it that effect of brickwork. And that worked quite nicely as well. When it's all painted up, I was really pleased with how that looked in the end. But this is, just a support thing. Again, it gives you a little bit of something to hide behind. Just breaks up the silhouette of the building, so it's not just a block. For the same reason, I ended up putting a chimney on it as well, which you'll see in a little bit. I just wanted to try and make it a bit more interesting than some of the blocky stuff I've built in the past, and this had the potential to be just another big block, which I didn't really want it to be. So for the plasterwork, I used a mix of Mod Podge, water and tile grout, and I wish I'd stuck with it. But I put it on and painted it all around all the different plaster areas and thought, it looks a bit grainy, it doesn't look great. So I went over it again with a mix of plaster of Paris, Mod Podge and water. And that's a lot more solid, and but it's got a lot of swirls and it's got a lot of bumps. I much prefer the look of the grout. I wish I'd have kept the grout look that I'm putting on here, because I think it would have looked better in the end. I don't hate how it looks now at the end. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't look awful. But I think this probably would have looked better. It would have certainly been thinner. It would have been easier to paint the windows, which were a pain because the plaster kind of clung to the edge of the windows. And so finding the edge of the windows to paint the metal onto them and finding where the wall ends and the window begins was just an absolute pain. Whereas with this stuff, it wasn't. So lesson learned for next time. On to the next floor. For this one, I decided to use foam card just to mix up the materials and try something different. Again, scored it the same as I did with the windows on the corners. I didn't actually have a piece that was wide enough for all four walls, which is why when you got three pieces here, I had to cut a fourth wall to do it, because it just wasn't wide enough. So fit that on. When I figure out which way round it goes, I can't remember, because I think it was about I think the wood that it's based on is 17 centimeters by 16 centimeters, so there is a correct way round for it to go, which I hadn't planned. I hadn't planned on it not being square. That was just the way it came out. And the beauty of cracking it, again, like with the windows, you can put wooden dowels into the corner, or wooden rods. Sorry, not rocks. Pardon me. And this was a chimney. Again, blue XPS, the same as before. I didn't carve any bricks into this one because I coat the entire wall and chimney with the grey bricks that I've used on the lower building as well, to give it that stronger feel. And so, all eyeballing, no real measurements here, just eyeballing it to a size that I thought looked quite cool, that I thought would look well as a chimney. Again, I'm sure there are probably kind of ratios that would have been used, but this is fantasy gaming. I don't think we really need to get that worried about that kind of thing. And for this bit, I wanted a sloped bay kind of window coming out. And the first time I did this, I cut the angles completely the wrong way and had the roof sloping towards the building, which was obviously a terrible idea. So I had to recut it again. But a very similar technique to the bay window I used in the first one, only this one has got a sloping roof, because I wanted to put some shingles onto it. And to do that, I had to stick, I stuck coffee stirrer sticks on it first, as you can see there, which I then snipped off at the edge, just the same as I did with the other bay window. And that gives the shingles something to stick to, and if there are any gaps, it kind of looks like a wooden roof. You can see there I've got the grey windows, so they're the ones that are FDM printed. The same files, just printed in a different way, so they kind of look the same. You can't tell the difference. My FDM printer's dialed in quite nicely. So at this point, it fits nicely, I've checked. We've got some wooden beams coming out onto the front, which I'm going to hang some canvas from later. We've got enough windows for it to be, look kind of cool. These are shingles. So these are from Shifting Lands is the website, and these are shingle cutters that you use with your hot wire cutter, and they're brilliant. I couldn't get them to work at first. I absolutely hated them. I thought they were terrible, and then I realised I'd got all my settings wrong on my wire cutter. You need it on the absolute coldest setting that you can, like the lowest setting that you can, and it'll still cut. But once you've cut around it, you then kind of slice it off into 1mm strips like that, and then stick them on. And I was slightly worried because they were quite flimsy at this point, and I was thinking, oh, these are going to break, they're going to snap. But once they're stuck on and they're layered over each other and they've been coated in Mod Podge and varnish and all of that kind of stuff and paint, they are as solid as you like. I had a couple on the first row break off a little bit, but it is within it fits with the aesthetic of the building. It looks just slightly damaged, that's all. But these were absolutely fantastic to work with. I was so impressed. It's not cheap. The actual cutters themselves, like the wooden blocks, aren't too expensive. I think they're about £12-15 each, which isn't bad. But the problem is they're coming from Holland, so the shipping is about £20. And that's where the cost builds up. So I ordered two. I ordered this style, and then I ordered some with square slates as well, which I haven't tried yet. So yeah, it's a shame about the postage. If they could sort out a UK supply, that'd be brilliant, because it'd just be so much easier to get hold of them and so much cheaper. But they are well worth getting. I know they do a lot of stuff with Proxon cutter as well. Mine's not a Proxon, mine's a Verva hot wire cutter, and I know they use stuff mainly for Proxon, but these work for any kind of hot wire cutters. So I didn't speed this bit up because I wanted to show you how easy really they were to stick on. And I'm just using high-tack, fast-tack glue here, and then just painting it onto each strip, painting it onto the roof, sticking the next one on, kind of staggering them so that you've got that look. And, to do the whole roof, well, you can see how quickly I'm going here. To do that whole roof probably took me about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit more. I got quicker. When I do this on the roof later, I got a lot quicker. I was a little bit cautious at this point. And it's hard. I've kind of left the full strip on there, which is harder to work with. By the time I got to the roof, I've kind of figured, right, if I cut it to the right length, it's just easier to work with. It's easier to stick down. There's less risk of it pulling and curling off. So yeah, that was a good learning curve for the next bit. Then I was onto the roof. I cut a square of cardboard, and I used a calculator online to work out a net for a pyramid to go on top, because I wanted kind of a pyramidal roof leading into a platform so that it had playability. So I cut this out of stiff cardboard and stuck it onto the the square that's going to sit onto the roof, as you can see there. Then I used stiff cardboard again to make kind of like a door hatch onto the front. This is what I was talking about earlier. I wanted it to seem, if I want people on the roof to be able to play, I need them to be able to get up there. Now, yes, there'll be ladders, and in Mordheim and things like that you can climb, and in Fighting Right you can climb. But, selling the idea of why is there a platform up here, you need a door, really. So I did that and made that. And then in the end, I don't think I've got video of this. I lost a lot of footage, and also I did a lot at night when I was in my pyjamas, and nobody wants to see that. So some of it is kind of done off camera if I think it's something that I've already done before. So I do go on and put wooden coffee stirrer sticks around the outside of the doorway sheddy bit, whatever you want to call it, coming out of the roof. But by this point I was quicker with the tiles. It probably took me about half an hour to do all four sides combined. And the roof of the shed bit as well, which didn't feel like long at all. And I think it just sells it really nicely. I've had comments from an architect. I put this a photo of this kind of work in progress into one of the Facebook groups I'm in, and this guy commented, as an architect, it makes my eyes bleed, but it does look cool. So I'd take that as a compliment. Like I said in the intro to this video, I used kebab sticks just to kind of edge it off here, and to give it I paint those copper later with a copper colour, to give it kind of a metallic beading, capping, whatever you want to call it, around the tiles. Yeah, as I was saying, with the roof, it should really have safety rails around the edge, but if I was to put safety rails onto the edge, they would just get broken off when kids play with them. You know, they would put figures down, they'd get knocked off, it would be a nightmare. So I just didn't bother. I kind of threw health and safety to the wind and kind of said, you know what, I'm just going to use it as it is, and we can suspend disbelief for now. Considering I didn't want to do much wooden flooring, I kind of shot myself in the foot with the roof there, doing that, because the whole thing is covered in coffee stirrers. I made another little pyramid using the same template as before, out of leftover Easter egg box as well, just to kind of give a metal cap to the roof. I then spray painted everything black and give it a white zenithal highlight from the top. I went around with the airbrush and painted all of the stones grey, painted all of the wooden beams brown, to give them a base coat, just to make it a little bit easier and a little bit quicker. You can kind of see here what I meant about the plaster of Paris mix I used for the panels. It just looks a little bit swirly. I think that kind of rendering does look swirly, but I think the scale is slightly off. I think that's what bugs me more. I then painted all of the panels with a flesh colour, creamy flesh, pale white, whatever you want to call it. I kind of mixed it up myself out of one of the Citadel flesh colours and some white and a little bit of brown, and painted all of the panels with that. I did end up giving them quite a strong dry brush in white as well, which you can see there. It's a lot whiter, a lot paler afterwards. I then went round, again, the same techniques as I did with the Mordheim base and the same as I did with the guard tower and the bridge and all of that. It's exactly the same techniques of painting grey, overbrushing with a lighter grey, and then dry brushing with a white or a really light grey at the end, just to give that stone texture and that stone colour. And went round the cornerstones with a dark grey, and went over these later on with another white, just to pick out the edges and just to give them that weathered look. And painted the tiles or shingles in red. My other shingles I've done in blue. I kind of wanted something brighter to stand out on this one, so I did these in red. I tried these in contrast paint first, and I didn't like how blotchy it was, so I just went for Mephiston red, one of the Citadel paints. Mephiston, not sure how you pronounce that one. Let me know in the comments. Yeah, painted that all red. And when I put the oil wash in a bit, it darkens everything down. At the minute they look very, very bright, but it does darken down and it does kind of go more subdued in a bit. And I painted the windows with the Dark Star steel paint. Dark Star are one of my new favourite metallics. They're absolutely amazing. You can get them from Element Games. Don't forget there is a affiliate link in the description below if you want to help the channel. Just buying anything through that link just gives me a little bit of money as a channel, without costing you any more. It just comes back from Element Games to me, a bit like a cashback. To me, it's not a huge amount, but it all helps. So yeah, if you want to get some of the Dark Star metallics or anything else hobby wise, head there. I used brown, a little bit of brown dotted on, and then some orange afterwards to give the windows a rust effect, just as though they're old steel windows. I'm glad at this point you can see that they're very black on the inside. You can, it doesn't look like there's a load of polystyrene on the other side. You can kind of, I've got the effect that I wanted, which is what I was going for. So that worked out well. So I was pleased that I remembered to stick the things. I was slightly worried I would forget and just leave it empty. And then once I got to this point, there's just nothing I could have done, really, other than just flood the inside. So I went on for an oil wash. Now, for those who haven't seen this before, an oil wash is just black oil paint, watered down or mixed down with white spirits to make it really fluid, and then painted over everything, and literally everything: the roof, the red shingles, the metal, just everything. This fills in any cracks that you might have missed. It stains all the grout in between the stones, give them an aged look, and it just makes everything look really old and dirty and grimy. And the beauty of using an oil wash rather than an acrylic wash is that oils stay wet for a lot longer. So you can wipe them off. You've got more playtime to kind of dab them off like I am doing here. With acrylics, they dry quite quickly. So you've got to work a lot quicker. They leave tide marks on things. They can work just as well if you're quick. With this, I wanted to be able to take my time and come back later if I needed to. With oils, you can come back with a bit of white spirits later before it's varnished and just wipe it off. At this point, my daughter's decided to help me, my youngest daughter, and we wanted to put some canvas onto the struts. I did this using baby wipes. So I got the cheapest baby wipes I could find them, about 75p from Boots, left them drying on the radiator so that they were dried out. They did have duck patterns in them, I noticed, but you don't see that in the end. That kind of comes out with the paint. My shoulder's really in the way at this point. It's terrible filmmaking. But I just cut little slits in so that I could thread them over the wooden beams and kind of into a bit like a curtain pole, so like over, under. So I was just cutting some slits and checking that it fits. Because I wanted, and I could have just put them on as baby wipes and spray painted them or airbrushed them, but I wanted them to be really strong so that people can put figures on there. I know kids, when I take these into classrooms, are going to want to put figures on there. They're going to want to have fights on top of these canvas and write about it. That's one of the beauties of fighting writing. I kind of want to put figures on there when I'm playing Mordheim. If I use it, get there. So I wanted it to be tough. So in a minute, we absolutely soak it in Mod Podge and green paint. I think I used War Flesh, the Citadel miniature, orc skin kind of green. And that just gives it that extra strength and extra toughness so it's not going to tear. The reason, and baby wipes are better than kitchen roll, I found, because baby wipes are tough anyway. So they're less likely to tear than kitchen roll would be anyway. Which is really important. Like I said, these were just the cheapest, unscented ones. And by the time we've put the Mod Podge on it and all the paint and everything, you can't, like the bunny imprint has kind of gone anyway. I was slightly worried I would get it on and just be able to still see these rabbits, which would be a funny story if nothing else. But you can't. It's absolutely fine. So yeah, give it a really good soak in the Mod Podge and the paint. I've got my assistant to help me at this point. I'm not quite sure what she's playing with here. I think she's just kind of tickling it a little bit. While I get my rubber gloves on, because I did not want green fingers. And then it was just, case of threading it on, which again, I did video it, but all you saw was my shoulder, so I've kind of cut to the bit where it's on. I got the ripple marks in, so it kind of looked like it had drawn a little bit. Then, once this was dry, I went over it just with a bit of Agrax Earthshade through the airbrush into the shadowy bits, just to really make those shadowy bits dark. And then it was pretty much finished. It was at this point that my daughter, who was with me there, decided she wanted some rats on the building, because it was an old building. So we had to quickly 3D print some rats and paint them up. See if you can spot them in the big reveal. Okay, I think, speaking of which, it's about time. Here we go.